and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
All right, my name is Omobola Stephen, the host of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, where mindship conversations happen. Now, on the podcast Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, we share profound, disruptive, yet constructive mindship conversations on topics, subjects that are centered on personal development and self-improvement. We have professionals who are adepts in these topics, who come to share insightful yet transformative insight that is going to pivot the positive changes you and I need in the side of eternity. Now, the focus and the mission of Lively by Mobile TV is for us to emphasize the need for you and I to embrace personal development and self-improvement along the course of our lives. Now, all of the potentials, now the possibilities that life has in store for us, we can only get to harness and maximize them when we begin to look inwards and begin to see how best we can begin to have a mind shift and begin to have a transformation in the way we look at life and also in how we can begin to embrace the changes that life's bringing our way. Now, when we want to experience positive changes in our life, then we must be ready to embrace changes that life's bringing our way. In other words, for us to begin to move towards the life that we envisage for ourselves. Thank you, Tom Hagerty, for joining me on the show. Tom Hagerty is a retired corporate executive, author, and business fix. We have you on the show today. We'll be talking about the $8 trillion impacts of bad relationships. Good to have you on the show and looking forward to a great time.
Thank you, Amal. I'm looking forward to serving your audience well.
Absolutely, looking forward indeed. Tom, now it is your headline. It says our relationships are crumbling and getting worse. And now you came up with some statistics in the US. Can we talk?
Absolutely, we can. The statistic that I like to push out in terms of business impact of failed relationships is that it is an $8 trillion global problem with failed relationships that impact companies. This is 11% of the gross domestic product worldwide, and that is a shocking statistic when you think about that kind of impact. And that comes from a 2022 survey done by Gallup. And Gallup said that this 7.8, almost $8 trillion problem results in decreased productivity. It results in higher absenteeism. It results in more abrupt quitting. It results in higher recruitment costs. And all of these put together are an $8 trillion problem. I mean, for instance, an employee who is impacted in a bad relationship, that employee can disrupt workflows. It results in higher absenteeism rates by 37% over an employee in a healthy relationship. There are customer service declines. Disengaged employees are 63% more likely to quit abruptly. And when you look at that quitting and the cost of recruiting a new employee, it can be 33% of an employee's salary just in recruiting costs. So it's a massive problem for businesses worldwide and especially in America.
All right, now going by your statistics, what types of relationships are most at risk?
The relationships that are most at risk are decidedly familial relationships, typically spousal, typically in the call it the integrated family relationships where there are difficulties with parents, with children, with spouses. Those are the ones that are most at risk right now, for influencing the workplace. Again, now all of our relationships are important, obviously friendships and work colleagues, but the ones that are integral to us and that impact us the most and therefore influence these statistics the most are the ones that are within the nuclear family, call it.
To talk about the personal impact of failed relationships.
Well, it's also shocking on the personal side. Right now in America, and I'm speaking just for our country right now, but it transitions across the world to a lesser degree. But right now, American children are 3 times more likely to grow up in a single parent household than in the worldwide average. So when you think of that, this country that is the richest country, the most powerful country, the most technologically advanced country, the most democratic country by any standard of measurement, even not considering our current political climate. We are a bellwether for democracy and for equality and for inclusion in the world. Our children are 3 times more likely to grow up in a single parent household. In America today, 60% of the population says that loneliness is my constant companion. That 60% is basically saying, I don't have a close friend that I can count on in difficult times. 68% of us, over 2/3 of us, are saying we fundamentally don't trust other people. And this is not a Tom Hagerty, quote or some kind of sensationalistic viewpoint. This is, again, this is Gallup and other respected research organizations that are saying that we are in deep trouble when it comes to personal relationships, and we are just not working well with each other. And the impact, the biggest impact is on the children, which is a tragedy.
But Tom, really, I believe that the American environment encourages this development. What's the headway?
I think we need to get back to fundamental values. You were exactly right when you say that in America, at least, the societal um, disincentive toward marriage and for multi-generational families to be close to one another, that has been developing over decades. And you see it in the divorce rate. Certainly there are demographic differences in the divorce rates. The most common statistic has been 50% of marriages fail, but there are slices of that. Lower socioeconomic marriages fail with much greater frequency than higher socioeconomic uh, demographics. But it's very clear that America has made divorce very easy. And when that happens, and when the family splits apart, and when the multi-generational fabric of those families is torn, that has a significant impact on obviously children, but also the future prospects for the family continuing.
All right, sir. So, what do you think are the qualities of thriving relationships when we look at the failed relationships? So, how can we begin to build thriving relationships? We need to begin to focus on the American environment, really, as you just highlighted, the statistics are overwhelming. And so, can we begin to fix that?
Absolutely, we can. I wrote in my book, Business of Relationships, which is really foundational research that talks about the qualities of thriving personal relationships. And this is true not just in families, but in friendships, in workplace associations, with collegial, call it friendships and so forth. There are 12 qualities that are pretty universally thought to be major influencers of thriving personal relationships. These are things like perspective and integrity and honesty and trust and a sense of appropriate risk, a sense of change, priority, prioritizing another person, being committed to another person, respecting another person, engaging meaningfully with another person. Um, the quality of humility is critical, and so is the quality of resilience. So those 12 are illustrated in my book. And what I've tried to do that I think is somewhat of a departure, I haven't seen another book like it, is to look at acknowledged business leaders and how they spoke about those different qualities. They didn't speak about the quality in terms of, say, a relationship. Many of the quotes that I chose were clearly business quotes, but they could be applied to a personal relationship. And I think those 12 qualities are ones that are pretty universal. These are things that have been written about in the Harvard Business Review. They've been written about in the Northwestern School of Medicine Journal. They've also been exposed on marriage.com, NBC News, CBS News. They may not all agree with all 12, but they're there, and they're foundational to thriving personal relationships.
Tom, really, why did you say that we need to begin to embrace a CEO's wisdom?
Well, I had a lot of fun with this model. I mean, I am a business guy. I grew up in that world, and many of these executives are people that I either met or know about or have admired. And when you think about a CEO, especially one of a major public company, these are people that are paid very well to foster great relationships. I mean, a CEO is going to fail if his or her relationships with employees, with vendors, with customers, with shareholders, with regulators, if those relationships are not optimized, that CEO is going to fail. So, in essence, what you have is someone who is paid to have great relationships. And I thought to myself, if that's true, then why wouldn't we listen to them? Because we listen to so many voices that are transitory. The musician of the day, the politician of the moment, the author of the week, if you will. How many times have we said, "Boy, did you read the latest quote from Taylor Swift? Boy, did you see what Michael Jordan had to say, about something?" And the gravitas, those are all very talented people. No question about it. I have no quibble with them at all. But the gravitas to be able to speak about something outside of their particular, discipline, if you will, is just not there. And when I look at a CEO that has had a lengthy career that is progressive, and it moves a company's needle. It takes care of employees, it takes care of shareholders, it takes care of customers and vendors. That to me speaks with much more weight than the person of the moment, if you will. So that's foundationally why I thought a CEO is somebody we ought to listen to.
Right. Maybe we'll begin to think about that. So we talk about unhealthy relationships, toxic relationships. In one way or the other, you and I may have found ourselves in this kind of relationships. So for the benefit of the audience, what are some of the signs a person might be in an unhealthy relationship, and what can be done about it?
Well, I think it gets to our human instincts, first of all. We are a species that has a fight or flight response. That is oftentimes toxic to a relationship. The conflict arises, the instinctive reaction is often to fight it. We can give the silent treatment, we can withdraw, we can isolate. That is not going to be helpful. That is not going to nurture. a good relationship. I think our brains for millennia now, our brains have a negativity bias. We just seem to want to look at the instinctive uh, negative experience over positive ones. We dwell in a relationship context. We tend to dwell on our partner's flaws or mistakes. And again, we don't tend to appreciate the good qualities. So I think that would be something that would be indicative of heading into a toxic relationship. A lot of us have a fear of vulnerability. Um, there's a desire for novelty. Let's face it, we get into a relationship and it becomes comfortable, it becomes safe, it becomes something that we get used to. But as human beings, we sometimes crave novelty, and done wrongly with that, without a partner being along with you for that ride, so to speak, that's toxic to a relationship as well. That you are seeking novelty, you're seeking some kind of antidote to that need for security. Call it excitement, call it the thrill, and oftentimes that damages our ego or our self-preservation characteristics or some other things. So it's those kind of relationships, when we have negativity bias, that we don't try to counteract, when we have the fight or flight, when we fear vulnerability, that is going to damage a relationship, no question about it.
But really, Tom, we all know that instincts is crucial for a healthy relationship. So why do you think that it can sabotage a relationship?
Well, I mentioned those, but there are others. We have a lot of territoriality. What's mine is mine. The saying, at least in America, has been what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too. We are just not wired to do a good job when it comes to being very territorial, when it comes to being overly possessive. Many of us fear rejection and abandonment, so that can sabotage a relationship. Um, the short-term gratification coming in over long-term connection definitely sabotages relationships. And all of these have been verified by independent studies over the years, whether it's a Gallup study, whether it's research, in the college environment. But all of these different characteristics that we just talked about are going to sabotage a relationship.
All right. So what do you think are the most common relationship problems? You like to share?
The absolute most common problem that I see and that I wrote about in the book in various ways is the failure that we have to commit. Um, we as an American society, and certainly as a human race, um, are in great fear of commitment, and our world right now is not incentivizing that commitment. We have lost the sense of tribe, if you will. We've become very individualistic. We have become very self-motivated. We have become very isolated, and we can afford to be. I saw something the other day, a statistic the other day, that talked about the fact that if we don't want to interact with another human being, we literally don't have to. Everything is a tap away on the phone. Uh, and I think that human connection is at risk of being lost. And if we allow it to be lost, we will suffer from it emotionally and psychologically, but we will not suffer from it physically. And physical suffering is something that for most of us is vanishing. Uh, we don't need a tribe to preserve our sense of self. We don't need a tribe to allow us to survive. We can survive in isolation. It's at great risk, but that is something I think is very compelling to me, that we have become able to be isolationist.
But really, Tom, human relationships, right, is the most challenging kind of relationships, so human connections. I'm sure you agree with me on that. But
Yes,
really, how can we begin to get it right?
I think there's a couple of things that I look at. First of all, I think we need to realize ourselves one on one individually. We need to realize that human relationship is something that is foundational to this species and has been ever since we started walking on two legs. Um, the human relationships have been talked about in all of the major religions of the world. All of the major religions speak of the primacy of relating to, getting along with, nurturing, supporting, growing each other. They do it in different ways, but the result is the same, that we need to be in relationship with each other. The other thing I think we need to realize is that it is a proven fact that thriving personal relationships do increase longevity. They do increase health outcomes. They do reduce diseases. They do reduce depression. All of the markers of modern society that we're experiencing now with the increasing, rates of suicide, depression, anxiety, etc., all of those are mitigated by thriving personal relationships. It's an absolute proven fact.
Tom, do you have any exciting news, perhaps a project in the pipeline you think it's going to be beneficial to the audience? Come on, you can share them if you have any.
Well, I am at work busily talking to corporate groups, schools, medical associations, and so forth about the relationships, and the primacy, at least, of the business voices in that. So that's been somewhat consuming to me. I also have four grandchildren, so that's an exciting project. They're all under the age of 12. I'm having a lot of fun with that. Um, and I've got a book or two, some ideas that are very different from the current book, but one that I think will, at least intellectually nurture me and have some fun with. I mean, if you're going to be a writer, you better be writing about things you care about, or you're not going to be any good at it. So I'm, yes, and I got to work on my golf game too. We've had a wet spring here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I need some more practice. So I'm gonna work on the golf game too.
Right, good to know. Now, yeah, yes, you're good at writing, and you authored the book, The Business of Relationships. You can share some of the places we can access the book, if any, and your social media and also your website.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can access the book on Amazon. It is called The Business of Relationships. The subtitle is Using the Wisdom of Great Executives to Create Thriving Personal Connections. Like I said, that's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Noble and other outlets. And I would just like to give you an example, if you will, of how I use these quotes, because um, again, a business executive in a speech, in a corporate communication, in an interview on television or radio is talking about his or her business. But the transcendental nature of some of these quotes is really pretty evident to me. And I'll illustrate it with one example. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric Company here in America. He had a 20-year career as CEO. He tripled shareholder value, and he was known as a really, really tough guy to work for. Inspired great loyalty, but not an easy guy to work for. And in a speech to his business leaders of the various units, he warned them, he said, if you are not number one or number two in your marketplace, I will fix you, close you, or sell you. And his follow on to that was he said, so change before you have to. And those simple 5 words, change before you have to me, were transcendent of the boardroom. They were transcendent of a shareholder letter or a speech. Because change before you have to in a relationship could be change before you have to the passive aggressive nature that you have with your wife and children. Change before you have to the financial irresponsibility. Change before you have to the budding addiction. Change before you have to the bad temper. And you could go on and on and on, but those simple 5 words, while they were given in a speech to his business leaders, change before you have to could be a prescription for a lot of us in a personal relationship. And there are many of those examples in the book that I'm pretty proud of, that you find a quote and you see the transcendent nature of it. But yeah, that's an example that hopefully will be instructive to your audience and maybe listening, and thinking about purchasing the book. That's one that I would throw out is going to be a transcendent quote for a lot of us.
Right, good to know. Thanks for sharing the takeaway lessons, indeed. Thank you, Tom Hagerty, for sharing your insight on today's show. We really had a great time as we listen to your expertise as regards the $8 trillion impact of bad relationships. Now, Tom Hagerty really is a retired corporate executive and author and business fixer. We really had a great time listening to your insight as we explore on these important topics, especially about relationships, since we all know that life is about relationships and relationship is all life is about. Thank you once again, and we wish you best of luck in your book project and in all the year of your project, future projects, endeavors that you embark upon. Thank you once again. It was a great time.
Oh, Omobola, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you, and thank you. And I hope I served your audience well. And if we ever get a chance to do this again, I would be first in line.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. I'm most
Thanks.
honored to have you indeed on the show. Now,
Thank
if
you
you'd like
very
to
much.
catch up with any missed episode on the show, absolutely, the pleasure is mine. You can catch up on any podcast distribution platforms you bump into online or any cross promotion platforms you bump into online. Just simply search for Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen, where mindship conversations happen on the internet or any other social media handles you bump into, and you have a great time listening to this disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations that is going to pivot the positive and constructive life that you and I really desire in this side of eternity. I always need you to stay safe always. I really need you to. With all my love, I talk to you soon. Thank you once again, Tom. That was a great time we had.
Thank you, Omobola. Thank you very much. Take care.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.